Hello, welcome to this video in Module 2. In this video, we will discuss evaluating AI outputs. We are going to discuss AI-generated texts and how we as humans can evaluate these texts based on perplexity and burstiness. So how can we evaluate texts to see if they have been AI-generated? In fact, there is no easy answer, but we can ID them the old-fashioned way by reading. So if there are too many uses of the words the, it, and its, or if the text reads too clean, it looks better, or contains zero mistakes, we can assume that it might be AI generated. We also know that human writing has variation. If you are interested, please also see Module 2 video on evaluating information, asking questions about the source that you're reading from and its writer, and the research behind it should help you decide whether or not something has been AI generated. We are going to talk about two different ways to think about AI generated texts and how we can detect them. So in AI detection perplexity, we're not talking about the AI model perplexity, but here as a measure used to evaluate how well a probability distribution predicts a sample. In the context of generative AI, it quantifies how surprised the model is by a given input based on the data it has been trained on. A lower perplexity indicates that the model is less surprised and thus better at predicting the input. So what does this mean exactly, and why is it important? Imagine you're reading a book and trying to guess the next word in a sentence, or you are using the predictive model on your phone. If the language and context are familiar, you can make accurate predictions, as can your phone. Similarly, language models trained on vast amounts of data use perplexity to assess how accurately it can predict or understand the next word or piece of data. So for example, an unexpected and hard to predict model might say the capital of France is a rare fruit named blue apple. In this case, we know that that is incorrect. That is not the correct capital of France. And we know that the model might not have been trained appropriately, that it may have been using words together, and why France and rare fruit named blue apple are together, we couldn't really say. However, if the model has low perplexity in that it is expected and easy to predict the capital of France is Paris, then we know that the model is correct, at least in this particular instance. This is important for when we start to evaluate our AI outputs, just to make sure that our facts are correct. The second one we want to look at is burstiness. So again, this refers to the tendency of certain events or terms to appear in clusters rather than uniformly or randomly distributed. In the context of AI-generated content, this can manifest as repetitive or clustered outputs when you might expect to see more diverse responses. And we mentioned this at the beginning. This is important because it provides insight into the quality of the AI-generated content. If it's repetitive or too similar, this content may indicate the model's limited understanding and inherent biases. The data patterns behind the model, we can recognize if this helps identify those patterns or biases that are present in the training data itself. So for example, high burstiness here is something repetitive and clustered. So if I were to put into ChatGPT and say, describe the ecosystem of a rainforest, and it comes back with this kind of output where it repeats the words rainforest and dense quite a bit, or variation of the word dense, we can see here that this is repetitive and clustered. And also there aren't very many variation in its sentence structure either. And so this is important. So that way I know that maybe this is not a model I want to use. If it's low burstiness, if it's diverse and spread out, so if I say describe the ecosystem of a rainforest, and I put this maybe into Microsoft Copilot, I might get back rainforests are vibrant ecosystems teeming with diverse life. From the tall canopy trees to the undergrowth, they are home to countless species of plants, animals, and insects. As we can see here, as we go through the rest of this paragraph, these sentences vary their structure a little bit. They don't mention rainforests, but they mention the density. However, they talk about the different kinds of species that are available and the climate. There are other things that are important for researchers. So within perplexity, this can help us understand, evaluate the quality of those generated outputs. We can compare the performance of different models. This can also help us assess whether or not this model understands a given data set or subject matter. And it helps decipher AI generated content by identifying contextual oddities. So again, we think about that Paris example. If a model is trained on specific genres or disciplines, it might show low perplexity for similar content, but high perplexity for unfamiliar subjects. Example might be if I were to use a model to try to predict new cancer, but my training model is actually maybe trained on Reddit posts, right? I would not want to use that model to help find other cancer in someone else, right? A model with low perplexity, so something that is overfit, might be overfit to its training data, meaning that it might not generalize well to new unseen data. So if I have a new type of cancer and I'm using some sort of cancer large language model, and this model is unable to predict or unable to understand what it's seeing because this is a new type of cancer. In that case, this model may have low perplexity and I, again, might not want to use it. So it all really depends upon how you're going to use the model. When it comes to burstiness, the consideration for researchers include looking at the training data. My model trained on data with inherent burstiness or repetition likely to produce clustered output. If these outputs are clustered, then that means there's really not a whole lot of variation happening within the model. We can adjust maybe some of the parameters. However, this may help mitigate burstiness in those outputs, but it may help to have some interdisciplinary awareness in understanding the norms of term usage in various disciplines, which can help distinguish the genuine burstiness from discipline-specific patterns. And you can maybe think a little bit more about some of those different ways maybe a cancer LLM might get applied to something else. Okay? So we wouldn't want to do that. There is more information on perplexity and burstiness as ways of evaluating AI-generated content on the University of Nevada, Las Vegas guide, which is associated with the module content in this video. I highly suggest you look at it, and I will say that I did take their examples to use in this video. In the next video, we will discuss AI detectors and the current research on them.